This is HOA outplayed. The contractor was ready to work, and she was ready to threaten. The post hole sat open in my yard, dirt piled beside it, and Judith Campbell came around the corner of my house at a full sprint, her purple blazer flapping behind her like a cape. "You are not allowed to do that without approval." Her voice cracked on the last word, finger jabbing toward the hole like she was identifying a crime scene. I looked down at the post hole digger still in my hands, then back at her. "The daily fines are already running." She pulled a phone from her blazer pocket and held it up like she was taking evidence photos. "I am documenting this violation right now." I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in a neighborhood called Juniper Terrace, and the homeowners association here is run by people who treat the rule book like a weapon. I work as an EMT dispatcher, which means my phone cannot be on silent and I cannot miss calls, and right now I had a fence contractor scheduled to arrive in 2 hours. Judith is the rules enforcement chair, and she has made it her personal mission to find violations where none exist. This fence was going to give me a secure backyard gate, which is the only access path for a service technician coming today to fix my HVAC unit. Without that gate, he would have to haul equipment through my house, and I did not have time for that. "I submitted my fence application 3 weeks ago," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I followed every step in the design review process." Judith lowered her phone and stepped closer, close enough that I could see the lanyard bouncing against her chest. It had a blank HOA badge clipped to it, no name or title printed, just a generic laminated rectangle that she wore like a sheriff's star. She shook her head slowly, lips pressed into a thin line. "You did not receive written approval. Digging without approval is an automatic violation. The fine is $50 per day, retroactive to the moment you broke ground." I let the post hole digger rest against my leg and pulled my own phone from my pocket. I have the email confirmation right here. Judith did not even glance at the screen. "I decide what counts as compliant, not you." That phrase again. She had said it to 3 other neighbors in the past year, always with the same smug certainty, always right before she hit them with fines they could not afford to fight. She turned and walked toward the property line, her steps deliberate, and I saw her pull a roll of blue painter tape from her blazer pocket. She tore off a long strip and pressed it to the ground about 6 inches inside what I knew was my boundary. "This is the setback line. Your fence posts cannot cross this. I am marking every spot you violate." The tape was her signature move. She used it to mark alleged boundary zones, setback violations, and easement encroachments all over the neighborhood, always without a survey, always based on her own eyeballed guesses. I had seen her tape show up on 3 driveways, 2 garden beds, and 1 mailbox post in the last 6 months. Every time the homeowner either paid the fines or ripped out whatever she had marked. I was not going to be number 4. "I need to see your survey," Judith said, standing up and brushing grass off her hands. "If you cannot produce a licensed survey showing this setback is correct, the violation stands." "I already sent you the survey." She crossed her arms. "That was last year. I need a current one, dated within 30 days. "The rule book does not say anything about 30 days. She smiled, the kind of smile that does not reach the eyes. "Keep arguing. You are making my case for me." I felt the small bag of screws shift in my pocket as I stepped toward her. The contractor was bringing fence panels and posts, and I had planned to help him set the first few before my shift started. Judith must have been watching my yard from her living room window, waiting for the moment I started work. She always knew when someone was trying to improve their property, and she always found a way to make it expensive. Behind her, a dog walker slowed on the sidewalk, phone out, filming from a safe distance. I made a mental note to ask him for that footage later. "The survey I sent you is from a licensed surveyor," I said. "It shows the property line and the setback. My fence is 3 feet inside my boundary, which exceeds the HOA requirement." Judith pulled her phone back out and tapped the screen a few times. "The portal is down. That means your appeal does not exist." "I cannot verify what you claim you submitted." My stomach dropped. The HOA portal had been glitchy for months, but Judith always used the downtime to her advantage, pretending that missing records meant missing compliance. "I have printed copies," I said. "I can bring them to you right now." She shook her head. "I need them submitted through the portal. Until then, the fine stands." She turned and walked toward the street, her purple blazer catching the wind, the blue tape roll still in her hand. I am updating the violation log. You will receive a formal notice within 24 hours. I watched her go, my jaw tight, my hands clenched around the post hole digger. The HVAC technician was coming at 2, and the contractor was scheduled for noon. I had no time to play Judith's game, but I also could not afford to rack up fines while I saved for something that mattered. I went inside and opened my laptop, pulling up the HOA portal. The login screen loaded, but when I entered my credentials, I got an error message. The system was down, just like Judith said. I opened my email and found the original submission from 3 weeks ago, the one with the survey attached. I printed 5 copies, each one showing the boundary line, the setback, and the exact measurements. Then I printed the email thread showing that Judith had acknowledged receipt. I kept my phone in my pocket because I was saving one clip for the finale. By 11:30, the contractor pulled up in a white pickup truck with fence panels strapped in the bed. His name was Miguel, and he had installed fences in Juniper Terrace before. He climbed out, took one look at the blue tape on the ground and sighed. "She got to you already." I nodded. "She says I do not have approval." Miguel pulled a clipboard from his truck and flipped through the pages. "I have your permit from the city. That is all I need to do the work. But if she calls the city and claims you are violating HOA rules, they might red tag the job until you sort it out." I handed him one of the printed survey copies. "This shows the fence is legal." He studied it, nodded, then looked at the blue tape. "She put that there, right?" I confirmed. He crouched down, pulled a tape measure from his belt, and stretched it from the property marker to the tape line. "She is off by 8 inches. Your setback is fine." He stood and handed the survey back to me. "I will start setting posts. If she comes back, I will deal with it. But you should document everything, because she is going to escalate." Miguel worked fast. He dug the remaining post holes, set the posts in concrete mix, and started leveling the first panel. I helped him hold the level while he adjusted the height. The clouds overhead were getting darker, threatening rain, and I wanted the posts set before the ground turned to mud. At 12:40, Judith came back, this time with a woman I recognized as the HOA treasurer, a short blonde named Diane, who always looked like she would rather be anywhere else. "Stop," Judith called out, her voice sharp. "This work is not approved." Miguel did not even look up. He kept adjusting the post, checking the level, tapping it into place with a rubber mallet. "I have a city permit," he said. "That is all I need." Judith stepped closer, her face flushed. "You do not have HOA approval. I am ordering you to stop immediately." Miguel set the mallet down and turned to face her. "Who are you?" Judith straightened, pulling the lanyard forward. "I am the Rules Enforcement Chair for the Juniper Terrace Design Review Association." Miguel glanced at the blank badge, then at me. "Does she have legal authority to stop permitted work?" "I decide what counts as compliant, not you," Judith said, her voice rising. Miguel picked up his mallet again. "Then you can take it up with the city. I am doing my job." Diane stepped forward, her hands raised like she was trying to calm everyone down. "Judith, maybe we should check the records before we shut down the work." Judith turned on her, eyes blazing. "The records are unavailable. The portal is down. That means we assume non-compliance." Miguel turned back to his work. Diane looked at me, apologetic, and mouthed sorry before following Judith back to the street. I heard Judith on her phone, her voice carrying across the yard. "I need enforcement here immediately. Unauthorized construction in progress." I knew she was calling someone at the management company, trying to escalate this into an emergency. Miguel finished setting the second post and moved to the third. "You have about 20 minutes before someone else shows up," he said. "Let's get as much done as we can." By 1:15, we had 4 posts set and 2 panels up. The fence was starting to take shape, and it looked good. Professional. Exactly what I had planned. Then a black SUV pulled up, and a man in a polo shirt with a management company logo climbed out. He introduced himself as Derek, the compliance officer, and asked to see my permits. I handed him the city permit and the survey. He looked them over, then walked the property line, checking the measurements himself. Judith stood on the sidewalk, arms crossed, watching him like a hawk. Derek came back and handed me the paperwork. "Everything checks out. The fence is compliant with city code and within your property boundary." Judith stepped forward, her voice rising. What about HOA approval? Derek glanced at his tablet. According to my records, you submitted a design review application 3 weeks ago. It was approved 2 weeks ago. Judith's face went pale. That is not possible. The portal is down. Derek turned the tablet toward her. I am looking at the approval right now. It is signed and dated. Your chair signed it. Judith snatched the tablet from his hands and stared at the screen. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She handed the tablet back and turned to me, her face now bright red. This does not change the setback violation. Your posts are too close to the boundary. Derek checked the survey again. The setback is 3 feet. The HOA requirement is 2 feet. He is compliant. Judith's voice cracked. I measured it myself. He is over the line. Derek walked to the first post, pulled his own tape measure, and confirmed the distance. 3 feet, 2 inches. Well within compliance. Judith stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing like she was trying to find words that would not come. Diane, still standing behind her, looked at the ground. Derek turned to Miguel. You are good to continue. He nodded to me, got in his SUV, and drove off. Judith did not leave. She stood on the sidewalk, staring at the fence, her hands clenched into fists. I went back to helping Miguel with the next panel, but I kept her in my peripheral vision. At 1:45, she walked to her car, opened the trunk, and pulled out a camera. She started taking photos of the fence from every angle, crouching low, standing on tiptoe, moving up and down the sidewalk like she was building a case. Miguel shook his head. She is not going to let this go. By 2, the HVAC technician arrived. He parked his van on the street and walked through the new gate opening, which was exactly why I needed the fence done today. He gave me a thumbs up and headed to the backyard unit. Judith watched him go, then got back in her car and drove off. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. That night, I got an email. It was from Judith, sent to my personal address and CC'd to the entire HOA board. The subject line was, "Compliance hearing required." The email said I had failed to provide adequate proof of approval, that my fence installation had proceeded without proper authorization, and that I was required to attend a hearing in 3 days to defend my actions. If I did not attend, the board would vote to impose penalties, including removal of the fence at my expense. I read it twice, my hands shaking. The hearing was scheduled for Thursday at 7, which meant I would have to leave work early. I forwarded the email to Miguel, who replied within minutes. This is retaliation. You should document everything and consider getting a lawyer. I agreed, but I also knew I did not have time or money for a lawyer. I was saving for something that mattered, and every dollar I spent fighting Judith was a dollar I did not have for that goal. The next morning, I called the management company and asked to speak to Derek. He confirmed that my approval was valid and that Judith had no grounds to demand a hearing. But he also said that the HOA board had the authority to call hearings for any reason, and that I was required to attend or risk a default judgment. I asked if he would attend and provide testimony. He said he would try, but he could not promise anything. I spent the next 2 days gathering evidence. I printed every email, every receipt, every permit, every photo. I organized it all into a binder with labeled tabs. I also called the dog walker who had filmed Judith's first confrontation and asked if he would send me the video. He agreed and emailed it that night. The video showed Judith screaming at me, placing the blue tape, and making threats. It was perfect. On Wednesday, I went to the city permit counter to confirm that my fence met all code requirements. The clerk pulled up my permit and nodded. You are good. The fence is compliant. While I was there, Judith walked in. She did not see me at first. She went to the counter and started arguing with the clerk, insisting that my fence violated setback rules and that the city needed to red tag the project. The clerk listened, checked the records, and shook her head. The fence is compliant. There is no violation. Judith's voice rose. I am the Rules Enforcement Chair for the Juniper Terrace Design Review Association. I am telling you there is a violation. The clerk crossed her arms. And I am telling you the permit is valid. If you have an issue with the homeowner, that is an HOA matter, not a city matter. Judith turned and saw me standing near the bulletin board. Her face went from red to purple. She stormed out without another word. Thursday came. I left work at 6 and drove to the HOA meeting, which was held in a community room at the neighborhood clubhouse. When I arrived, Judith was already there, sitting at the head of the table with a stack of folders in front of her. The other board members were scattered around the room. Diane, the treasurer, looked uncomfortable. The president, a retired engineer named Ron, looked bored. The secretary, a younger woman named Kim, was on her phone. Judith called the meeting to order and immediately launched into her presentation. She claimed I had started construction without approval, violated setback requirements, ignored multiple stop work orders, and refused to cooperate with enforcement. She showed photos of the blue tape, the post holes, and the fence panels. She did not show the survey, the city permit, or the approval email. When she finished, she sat down and folded her hands. I recommend we vote to impose a fine of $500 and require immediate removal of the fence. Ron looked at me. Do you want to respond? I stood and walked to the front of the room, carrying my binder. I opened it and started handing out copies of the documents. Survey. City permit. Approval email, signed by the board chair 2 weeks ago. Confirmation from the compliance officer that the fence is compliant. Video evidence of Judith placing tape on my property without authorization and making threats. Judith stood, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. This is irrelevant. He did not follow the process. I held up the approval email. You signed this. You approved my fence 2 weeks ago. Judith grabbed the paper from Ron's hands and stared at it. Her face went pale. I did not sign this. Ron took the paper back and compared the signature to other documents in front of him. That is your signature, Judith. Judith's mouth opened and closed. I do not remember signing it. Ron sighed. Whether you remember or not, the approval is valid. The fence is compliant. This hearing is over. Judith slammed her hand on the table. He violated the setback. I measured it myself. I pulled out my phone and played the video of Judith placing the tape. The room went silent. The video showed her placing the tape 8 inches inside the actual property line, then threatening me with fines. When it ended, Ron looked at Judith. You placed tape on his property without a survey? Judith crossed her arms. I was marking the violation. Ron shook his head. You were guessing. And you were wrong. Kim, the secretary, spoke up. If the compliance officer confirmed the fence is compliant, why are we even having this hearing? Judith turned on her. Because I decide what counts as compliant, not you. Kim raised an eyebrow. Actually, the board decides. And the city. And the management company. You do not get to overrule everyone. Judith's face flushed. Keep arguing. You are making my case for me. Ron leaned back in his chair. Judith, you just used that line in your own defense. That does not make sense. Diane, who had been silent the entire time, finally spoke. Judith, this has gone too far. You approved his fence. You cannot retroactively claim it is a violation. Judith pointed at me. He is trying to make me look bad. Ron stood. This meeting is adjourned. The fence is compliant. There will be no fine, no removal order, and no further action. Judith grabbed her folders and stormed out. I stayed to talk to Ron and Diane. Ron apologized for the hearing and said he would review Judith's enforcement actions over the past year. Diane said she had been getting complaints from other neighbors and that this was not the first time Judith had overstepped. I thanked them and left, feeling a small sense of relief. But I knew Judith was not done. The next morning, I got a text from Miguel. Judith showed up at the supply yard and tried to refuse delivery of your gate hardware. The manager asked for her legal authority and she could not provide any. They delivered it anyway, but she is escalating. I called the management company and filed a formal complaint. Derek said he would open an investigation. That afternoon, I got a call from a tow company. They said Judith had called and requested they tow my contractor's truck from the street, claiming it was parked illegally. The driver arrived, looked at the truck, and called me. I walked outside and handed him a copy of the city parking regulations showing that the truck was parked legally. The driver looked at Judith, who was standing on her porch, and shook his head. I am not towing this. He got back in his truck and drove off. That was the moment I knew I had to deploy the trump card. I had been holding one piece of evidence, waiting for the right time. It was a time-stamped doorbell video from my front porch camera, showing Judith sneaking onto my property the night before the first confrontation and moving one of my survey stakes 6 inches closer to the fence line. The video was clear, the timestamp was visible, and it proved she had framed me. I brought a printed evidence packet in a binder and made copies for the board, the management company, and the State Consumer Protection Office. I delivered them in person along with a formal complaint alleging harassment, property tampering, and abuse of authority. The management company received their copy first, and Derek called me that evening. "This is serious. We are opening a full investigation and Judith will be suspended from enforcement duties pending the outcome." The board received their copies the next day. Ron called an emergency meeting and invited me to attend. Judith was not invited. At the meeting, Ron played the doorbell video on a projector. The room went silent. When it ended, Ron looked at the board. "We have a major problem." Diane nodded. "This is tampering," Kim added, "and harassment and fraud." The board voted unanimously to remove Judith from the rules enforcement position and to refer the matter to the management company for further action. The State Consumer Protection Office opened a case file. Judith tried to fight it, but the evidence was overwhelming. The HOA rushed to settle, agreeing to mediation with a neutral third party. At the mediation session, Judith was forced to retract her claim in writing and issue a formal apology. She was also required to reimburse me for the cost of the survey, the city permit, and the contractor delays caused by her interference. The HOA agreed to update their enforcement policies and provide training for all board members. Judith tried to interrupt the mediation and argue her case, but the mediator cut her off. The board voted to accept the settlement before she could say another word. It was the funny karma moment I had been waiting for. She had spent months using procedural tricks to silence homeowners, and now the same system was shutting her down. 2 weeks later, the board announced that Judith had resigned from every leadership role in the HOA. The neighborhood group chat erupted with celebration. 3 other homeowners came forward with their own stories of Judith's harassment, and the management company launched additional investigations. The HOA adopted new rules requiring surveys for all enforcement actions and limiting the authority of individual board members. Miguel finished my fence. It looked perfect. The gate worked smoothly, the posts were level, and the panels were solid. I stood in my backyard, looking at the fence, and felt a sense of peace I had not felt in months. The HVAC technician came back the following week and used the gate without issue. My phone stayed in my pocket, and I did not miss any calls. The settlement money came through, and I put it toward the goal I had been saving for. I did not tell anyone what that goal was, because it was personal and it mattered more than any HOA fight. But I knew I had won, not just the battle with Judith, but the bigger fight to protect what was mine. Judith moved out of Juniper Terrace 6 months later. I heard she tried to join another HOA board in a neighboring subdivision, but her reputation followed her. The new neighborhood rejected her application. The blue painter tape disappeared from the neighborhood, and the enforcement actions dropped by half. People started improving their homes again, planting gardens, building decks, installing fences. The neighborhood felt different, lighter, free. Ron stayed on as president and worked with the management company to rebuild trust. Diane stepped up as the new enforcement chair, and she handled complaints with fairness and documentation. Kim started a newsletter to keep everyone informed about HOA decisions, and transparency improved across the board. I stayed involved, attending meetings and volunteering for committees, because I wanted to make sure no one else went through what I did. The doorbell video became a cautionary tale in HOA circles, shared in online forums and neighborhood chats. People used it as an example of why documentation matters and why you should never trust enforcement officers who rely on guesses instead of surveys. I got messages from homeowners in other states asking for advice on how to fight back against overzealous HOAs. I helped where I could, sharing templates, strategies, and encouragement. The fence still stands. It is strong, level, and exactly where it is supposed to be. Every time I walk through the gate, I think about the fight it took to build it, and I feel proud. Not just of the fence, but of the fact that I stood up, gathered evidence, and refused to be bullied. I hope your fines stay at 0.